Hello, everyone. Just wanted to welcome you and thank you kindly for joining our presentation here today. I hope everyone has been and continues to have a great focus event this year for 2021. We are honored to be back. We are Boomerang Carnets UK. This is our 6th year as an exhibitor. We have been in person. Last year, obviously, it was all digital, but we have been here for 6 years as an exhibitor. Today with us, we have myself. My name is Kyle Urson. I am an ATA Carnet specialist, both on our US side of our operation as well as our UK side. We also have Kurt Wilson, who is the managing director of Boomerang Carnets UK. He's also the president and CEO of Boomerang Carnets US. We're also honored to have Eric Huyton, who is a media carnet specialist. He has over 30 years experience as a documentary cameraman and a vast knowledge in the usage and practical usage of ATA Carnets in the filming industry. Today, we're going to be talking about a few things. We'll start with the importance of ATA Carnet use. We'll move into what we consider the boomerang benefit with ATA Carnets. We will then turn it over to Eric to talk about the media carnets aspect of our organization. We will also talk about the boomerang customer experience, and then we will end with some closing. So at this point, I will turn it over to Eric Huyton to discuss why you would want to use an ATA Carnet, particularly in the film industry.
Thank you, Kyle. As Kyle says, I've been working in the industry as a documentary cameraman for 35 years. And that's meant that I've traveled all over the world with expensive filming equipment. So I know exactly what it's like to stand in front of customs officers at border checkpoints, airports, border crossings all over the world with our equipment and trying to explain to them what we're doing. The object, of course, being to get through customs so we can get into that country and start doing our job effectively, which is making the film. So the experience I can bring to this is that I can offer advice to production companies based on what I know in the practical real world sense of using carnets. So just to talk about the challenges of filming overseas in the first place, as we all know, it is quite a big challenge to get all the equipment together in the UK, make sure it's all packaged up correctly, make sure it all works, get it into the right boxes, send it on aeroplanes, accompanied by the crew most of the time, and get it into country. And if that's not hard enough, then the final thing we do when we get to our destination is, having got through immigration, of course, and shown our passports, we go to the baggage carousel where hopefully, we've all done this, we'll sit there and we'll check the boxes coming off and we'll count them and count them again and count them again to make sure that actually we have got everything off the plane that we put on in the first place in the UK. And generally that works out, and most of the time it all turns up, which is good news. But the final challenge, of course, then is you have to get out of the airport. It's no good staying in the airport, you've got to go through customs, and that's the final point at which they'll check what you've got with you. So the customs officers are just doing their job. It's what we expect. It's quite right they do that. They're protecting their borders. They're looking for things coming into their country that are undesirable. And there's many, many things that fit the bill there. But what we're doing is simply going into their country to use our filming equipment to make our film or record a documentary sequence or whatever we're doing. It could be natural history, it could be a science-based doc, it could be a reality TV show or whatever it is. But we're turning up nonetheless with boxes full of high value equipment. And you know, it's high value, it's actually highly desirable. We've got things like cameras, lenses, we have offload machines to download our rushes, we've got computer equipment, we've got lighting. All of these things are actually quite desirable and saleable. So from the customs officer's point of view, they're looking at this and thinking, well, how do we know that you're not going to bring all this into our country and sell it and avoid paying taxes and duty? So you have to explain to them that that's not what you're doing. We're simply coming with the equipment that we're going to use ourselves, and we're going to look after it. And most of all, we absolutely want to take it back home with us because it's valuable to us. So we're not going to leave it in your country. We're not here to sell it. And the ATA Carnet is the perfect document for explaining that to customs officers. So what you've done is you've listed all your equipment, and you can show the customs officer that you've got the carnet and they can check it off against the equipment, and then hopefully they'll be satisfied and they will let you in. So the risks you take if you don't use a Carnet, because actually, it's important to say no one's making you use a Carnet. It's not a legal requirement. You're perfectly free to travel to any destination throughout the world that you choose without using an ATA Carnet. That's fine. You can turn it with your equipment. But what would happen then is that you wouldn't have the backup of the document to explain what you're doing. You wouldn't appear as immediately professional or legitimate, and you'd have to just start the process of explaining to customs officers why you're here, why you've got all this equipment, why you've got all these valuable items, cameras, lenses, lighting, sound equipment, computers, and what you're going to do with them. Now, that in itself will take a long time. You're going to have to convince customs officers that you are not going to sell it, but they probably have no proof of that because they can't log your equipment coming into the country, and more importantly, they can't log it going back out of the country, so they can't prove it's been taken away and not left in country. So they can do one of three things. They could just charge you the import duty there and then, and if you've got equipment often well in excess of £100,000 worth, I've done carnets that are £500,000 worth of filming equipment. And they can ask you or tell you, demand that you pay a sizable chunk of that as import duty there and then. So you could be looking at something like 40% of that value, which you'd have to stump up in cash or a bank bond and deposit with customs officials before they go and let you into the country. And that's a very expensive thing to do. The second thing they could do is they could say to you, well, we're just going to hold on to your equipment here. We're not going to let you take it into the country. You're free to go. But then, of course, you're going to be standing in the country to go filming without any equipment. Not a good result. And the third thing they can do, and they might do, is simply turn you around and send you back home. So not having a Carnet presents huge risks. And, if you've got the Carnet, you're going to get through customs quicker, and you can clearly show customs officials what you're doing. So I think it's a great document. It enables me to go and do my job very quickly and simply, and it's what I use all the time. There's just been a few occasions when it's been slightly harder than others, but that's generally down to the country you're visiting and the attitude of customs officers that you come up against. But generally, it works really, really well. There have been just one or two occasions where I've been sort of lulled into a false sense of security and tempted not to use a Carnet. And this is a bit of sort of a word of warning. We went through a couple of years of doing a series of business films for a client that were multinational and based all over the world. They had offices in the Far East, Middle East, Africa, America, and Central America. So we were just filming business films. They were just simple interviews, very few lighting setups, and we had a very small kit based around 2 DSLR cameras. And my producer and I thought, well, do you know what? We probably can get away without using a Carnet. We'll save a little bit of money and we won't have to go and get the Carnet stamped coming out of the UK, so it will save some time. And we went in and out of America about 3 times. And we were getting away with this because we had 2 Pelly cases on wheels we strolled through customs with quite nonchalantly. And we had a rucksack with some camera kit in and our personal bags. And for the first 3 times, it worked. No one even noticed. 4th time we went into JFK, we were pulled over by customs because they just saw our big boxes and thought, we'll just check you guys out. And they asked what we were doing. And we said, oh, we're just here to make, just basically here as amateur photographers, keen professionals, we said. When they opened up boxes and they looked inside and saw 2 A7S cameras and some lighting equipment and a couple of tripods and things, they started to get suspicious. And our story of being, professional or not professional, but just keen amateurs didn't actually wash with them at all. And they said to us, you should use a Carnet if you're bringing this sort of equipment into the country, into the USA. And I had to say, well, kind of, not really sure about that. Don't know, sorry, and just make up an excuse like that. And they said, gentlemen, take a seat. And they went away and left us there sort of sweating for about 20 minutes. And the customs officer came back to me and he said, which one of you is Eric? And I said, well, that's me. He said, okay. You tell me that you don't know about Carnets. I said, well, I kind of know a little bit, but didn't really need to think we use them in this instance. And he said, well, explain this to me then. He said, in 2002, you came into Montana from Alberta in Canada, and you had a carnet, and on that carnet, amongst other things, was a Canon 300mm lens valued at £3,000. So you're telling me that you don't know what a carnet is, and yet you did actually use a carnet. And actually, I've got your history here, and I can see you've used a carnet many, many, many times. So now tell me again that you don't know what a carnet is. And I was just like, couldn't get away with that at all. So that was me, to use the term bang to rights. I had to just confess and say, look, I'm really sorry. And we were just thinking that it didn't matter because it's low value and we weren't doing anything wrong. And it was highly embarrassing. And we thought that, he's going to turn us around. And the story is that he said, well, look, I am going to let you in this time. But he said, gentlemen, make no mistake. You are now on our radar. Your passport numbers and your entire travel history has been marked and you have been flagged. So the very next time and every time you come into the USA from now on, you will be pulled over by customs and you will be subject to a thorough check. So that was my lesson learned. And I'm telling you that because that's again why really use a carnet. It'll get you through customs quickly and you'll avoid exactly that sort of problem. So with that word of warning, I'm going to hand back to Kyle.
I believe actually we're handing it over to Kurt on this one.
Thank you,
I
Eric.
don't want to step on your toes.
And thank you, Kyle. I always like that story, Eric. My name is Kurt Wilson, and I'm going to take a few minutes to explain the boomerang benefit and how it evolved and the benefits of using boomerang carnets here in the UK. And we've been in the carnet business for 40 years, and mostly in the US, of course. We've been in the UK for 6 or 7 years. And just to give you a little example of the effect we've had bringing in our expertise as well as our 24/7 service is working with the Liverpool Chamber of Commerce as the authorized carnet issuing chamber. When we joined them, they were doing 30 or 20 carnets a year, and presently we're almost at 2,000 carnets a year based on the increase of our services and the expansive boomerang benefit that we've spread out throughout the UK and including in the US. And the reason I keep bringing up the US and the UK as these two synergy countries in the production industry is because in England and the US, production industry is predominantly driven by the UK and the US. Of course, there are other production entities throughout the Carnet system, which is 87 countries and territories. But boomerang benefit works so beautifully between these two countries to support both productions in the US and productions in the UK, as well as the Brexit issue for all UK exporters now that haven't had to have a carnet throughout the EU's time. And now they're pretty much all rookies when it comes to getting a carnet, how to use it, where to go, the best delivery options of getting the carnet after it's processed, as well as the application tutelage that we provide, because the UK industry for carnets with Brexit now is a needed consultation. So we have access to all the information that a traveler would need, especially in the production industry. And the boomerang benefit brings in strategic partners that we have on the freight forwarding side, the insurance side, and the duty management or customs transaction side if you're traveling to a non-carnet country and coming back into the UK after your trip. So another issue we have that we're very good at is the types of same-day carnet services that we have and the delivery and carnet pickup network throughout the UK that's been very beneficial to the production industry because of the last minute types of jobs that production companies have, that they have to travel very soon after they get the order to do a production job that they've been bidding on. So we have same day service. There are some additional fees associated with that, but it's a service that we accommodate quite regularly with the production industry. If you're a London-based production company, which most are, and or you're down in Bristol or up in the Liverpool area, we can pretty much provide you with a carnet with same day delivery service and pickup, and it's quite a service that is extensively utilized. Eric is based in the Bristol area, and there's a community of production companies down in Bristol that keep him very busy these days. But we have all the corners covered as far as where you can go and how you can apply for your carnet with the expertise that Eric provides, as well as the staff that services the UK. This slide shows the trusted partner network that we have. Liverpool Chamber obviously is the authorized issuing chamber, and SOS Global Express is our strategic partner for freight forwarding and logistics needs. And Britannia Bureau down in the left-hand corner is a customs and duty management company that we partnered with that is now offering their customers access to carnets. And then there's Media Carnets, which is Eric Huyton, and his role is experienced production and cameraman. And we join all these forces together to give you the best product, best service, and the very competitive cost structures. The boomerang beneficiaries of this services are the companies that you see in this slide, and they're in the media business predominantly. There are some private production companies listed here that we service very regularly. One that comes to mind on the bottom center is Offspring Films. And during the pandemic, when there was no travel happening, but there was still need for production services across the world, we used Offspring Films as kind of the guinea pig company to do what we called carnets for cargo. And that service was, not hand carried like the production crews usually, move their own goods on a commercial airline. This service was done in conjunction with our strategic partner in the logistic business, SOS Global, who shipped Offspring's Films goods and equipment to the U.S. to where it was utilized for a job and then shipped back to the UK. And it was, you keep business going during the pandemic, and that's exactly what that service provided. I'm going to turn it over back to Eric, who is going to give a little bit of the explanation of what Media Carnets offers to the production industry and how his expertise and years of using carnets is invaluable to traveling for production companies who travel with carnets.
And if I could just interject before, not to cut you off, Eric, I think it's worth noting that the previous slide of the boomerang beneficiaries is in no way an exhaustive list. It was just some of the names that we believe people might recognize on a higher level. And during the pandemic, we did see, in addition to Offspring, both on the US and on the UK side, sometimes the people couldn't travel as easily as the gear did. So production industry, as Eric will mention, and as Kurt has, is often hand carry because you are traveling with your very expensive equipment. But during the heavy part of COVID, we saw a lot of clients that were traditionally always hand carry turning to us for advice on how to do carnets for cargo, how to utilize a freight forwarder to move the gear for you, wherein instead of you getting all the in and out custom stamps, the forwarder would do that on your behalf and kind of white glove the gear from the origin country to the destination and then back again. So sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Eric, but I just wanted to make sure that obviously that was just a high level list of just a few of the beneficiaries of our boomerang benefit.
Thank you, Carl. Yes, indeed, we do have many, many beneficiaries taking good benefit from our service. So yeah, media carnets. The important thing about my experience is that I can bring that to help media companies and production companies prepare their carnets. So as a freelance cameraman, I understand what it takes to get the to get the list together in the first place. Often freelancers will have their own equipment that they're going to use on your location shoots. And in the production office, you might be a production manager or a production coordinator or a researcher helping out. And one of the first things you have to do is talk to the whole team about what equipment you're going to need in order to visualize and record the scenes and sequences that you're going to film when you get out there. So that means that you've got to coordinate with your producers, directors, your camera teams, your directors of photography, your cinematographers, camera operators, and all the people in the field, as well as, you're probably going to get some equipment from hire companies as well. And you're also probably going to use some equipment that you have in-house, equipment that you've bought yourself as a production company. So the equipment list is, by the very nature of it, complicated because of what's in it and because of where it all comes from. So you're going to spend quite a lot of time getting this equipment inventory together in the first place. And that's important because, we have to get the list together for the carnet anyway. So what you're doing is very, very useful, A, for your own purposes to make sure you've got everything you're going to need, and B, for the carnet. So preparation is absolutely key. And that's something that I always want to help with. And I try to get involved in that process early on. So I'll have conversations with production teams early on. And once they start to build their kit list together, we'll have a discussion about that. This slide here is familiar to most people who've worked in probably natural history, particularly. This is a fairly typical kit room, as we call it. That's rather sort of over glorifying it. And that probably represents a third of what's in that room. There'll be the same behind the camera, the same to the left and right. This is a Central America location. It's a tropical rainforest. It's for a shoot for the BBC that I was on. And this is the equipment probably used by the natural history guys and some of my sync filming equipment too. But, it is complicated. It's a bit of a mess, really. It comes in boxes, pelly cases, hard cases, rucksacks, dry bags, soft bags, all sorts of things that contain all the equipment we take with us. So it's a complicated thing to get together and a complicated list. And one of the questions I get asked over and over again, especially by people who are doing carnets for the first time or who haven't done a carnet for a while, is, do I need to list every single item and list it on the general list? Now, strictly speaking, the answer is yes, you do. That will be the answer you get from someone who is telling you the absolute rank and file answer of what you should do. Now, but I know that that's extremely hard to do. And I also know from my 30 plus years of traveling with carnets that when you get to customs officers on the border points, you do not need to have everything listed individually. It just isn't practical, A, for you to list it in the first place, and it's certainly not practical for them to take every item out of your inventory and lay it out and check it off one by one against the list. It would just take days. It's happened once to me in 30 years, and that was in Australia. And I think they were just looking for something to do. It was 2 a.m. and they just went for it. But that's the only time it's happened. So looking at this box here, it contains a lot of stuff. There's a map box at the top there. I think there's the LCD monitor for the red camera in the middle. And each one of those little plastic bags is going to contain a number of items. Each one's probably got 3 or 4 cables in there that connect the eyepiece to the camera body. There'll be a battery connecting cable. There'll be all sorts of things in there. Now, I know from my experience that you just don't have to list all those things, and you'll put line items inside, like a bag containing connecting cables will probably suffice for one of those small plastic bags there. Here's a typical shot of things we need. So you've got on this slide here, I think it's about 13 items. Now, strictly speaking, that will be 13 line items in your carnet, and you'd list each one separately. But looking at the metal rails there, these are 19mm rods to support the matte box. They go between the camera and the matte box or the follow focus unit. So I would say you would put that as one line item. So you'd have item number 37, 19mm rails, quantity 4, value, which would be the value of the total 4 items together, not each individual one. And you'd have the country of origin and the description of them. And that would then be one line item instead of 4. Likewise, on the right, you've got 2 grips. So rather than 2 line items, you put one item saying grips quantity 2. The bracket on the left, you probably list separately. And across the top, you've got media cards, quantity 4, again, one line item. The screwdriver, I'd probably just leave out. And so you can take that whole picture there and reduce 13 items into perhaps 3 or 4. So there's a big saving in line items, paper, and admin work there. Same thing here. Lots of small, complicated parts that go together. And again, customs officers are not necessarily going to be interested in each individual one of these, albeit that they have got value. Essentially, they're bits of metalwork. They're parts that go between the camera and the tripod to mount the camera on the tripod. There's a sliding base plate there. And there's lots of rigging bracketry and a couple of follow focus rods. But again, you could condense that from something like 15 items into maybe 4 or 5. And that would be quite sensible to do. The overarching sentiment in this, of course, is that you have got to explain that process to customs. If they do want to look at those line items and they do want to know why you've grouped them together, you can simply explain that they go together because they're part of a unit, they're the same sort of thing, they're relatively low value, there's no serial number. I mean, for example, what you could not do is group together 3 cameras. You couldn't say digital video cameras quantity 3 and have an F55, an Alexa Mini, and a red helium on one line item. That wouldn't work because they've got separate serial numbers and they're each individual high value items. But this sort of stuff you can group together, just as you can with tools. Tools of the trade is a good term to use. Toolbox containing tools. You do not need to list every step of a spanner and tape measure. So that's the sort of advice that I will give to production teams as they're compiling their list, and we can work together on that and make sure that the list does the job. It's credible, it's going to work for you, it's going to work for the customs officers, and it's not going to take you a massive amount of time to compile. So that's really talking about the equipment list. The other thing to mention is that, again, experience tells me that you just need to give yourself more time than you imagine might be needed to deal with the Carnet process. That's true of when you prepare it. Now, as both Kyle and Kurt have said previously, we do work in a last minute industry. It's not 9 to 5. And you can get people phoning and saying, look, I need to be in Kenya tomorrow. Can you please get me a Carnet? And yes, we can. But when you have got a bit of time, and when you have got a complicated list that might include a big shot over rig, for instance, and heavy gimbals, then the more time you've got to lead up to it, the better. It just allows us to massage that list properly and get it together in the right shape. Likewise, when you get to the airport, leaving the UK is your first port of, your first stop, then you need to leave yourself time. Booking in for an international flight, you need to check in at least 2 hours before departure time. We all know that. I'm a bit paranoid about that. I would give it 3 hours anyway. With a Carnet, I'll probably add 2 hours. And when I say 2 hours, that means 2 hours in the airport ahead of that 2 hour slot that you normally have to check in. So that's not sort of, so if I'm flying at 10 a.m., for instance, by 6 a.m., I want to be in the airport concourse. I've got rid of the hire car. I've done all I have to do, and I'm standing there ready to go. I'm not sort of approaching the airport concourse on the M25 going to Heathrow. At 6 o'clock, I'm ready to go, standing in the airport. Slight caveat on that is that do check what time check-in is, because for some early flights, the check-in desk might not be open. So you've got to sort of bear that in mind. But I'd much rather do that, give myself time, because it's just less stressful. I hate being stressed. I hate being pushed for time and potentially missing my flight while customs are dealing with my carnet. Worst case scenario is you get through in half an hour, you've got time for an extra cappuccino, and it's great. You can just relax before your flight. So time's really important. Leaving the UK again, you must always, always make sure you do find customs. This kind of, in airport situations, you tend to do it anyway. But recently I've been dealing with carnets going from the UK to the EU, so Folkestone to France, for instance. And it's a bit sort of, they're still feeling their way with that. It's a bit more of a sketchy process, and sometimes you can just be waved through. And I've had people arrive in France, or indeed they went through the EU to Norway, for instance, and got to Norway, and the customs, the officers there wouldn't look at the carnet because it hadn't been stamped out of the UK when they left Folkestone. So it's really important to make sure that happens, because if the carnet is not stamped by UK customs, it's not a valid document. And from then on in your trip, you just simply cannot use it. So always understand that UK customs must stamp your carnet.
Eric, that's so important. Very good points you've made, especially these days with the security lines that, you never know what you're going to get until you get to the airport, and giving yourself ample time will relieve that anxiety and stress from long lines, security checks, and getting in and finding the customs office, because each airport's different. And so very good points made.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Security can take a long time to get through, especially when you've got things that you're hand carrying as well, with batteries and stuff.
Yeah.
Final thing is just, when you're dealing with customs officers, just be pleasant to them, give them plenty of time, because sometimes they don't quite understand. Certainly if you're going to some developing countries, they're not going to be familiar with carnets. And actually that brings up another thing. I firmly believe in education, and telling people how to use the carnet is important. So I offer coaching sessions. So once you've got your carnet in your hand, we can arrange a phone call or a Zoom call. We can just go through the document page by page, and I can explain to you what each voucher does and how you need to approach that with the customs officers. And because the reason for that is because if you're confident in the process and you know what you need from the customs officers, then if they're not quite sure for whatever reason, or they're pushed for time, or they don't want to know, whatever it is, then you can make sure that they're doing their job properly as well. That takes the stress out of them if you handle it correctly. So yeah, understanding and having the knowledge and the confidence to use the carnet properly is a real bonus. So that's something that I recommend and offer as a service as well. But yeah, if you know all those things, use the carnet properly, be pleasant to customs officers, don't be stressed, give yourself time, it should all go pretty well. And as we said before, if things don't turn out so well, then you can always phone Boomerang Carnets, and we'll pitch in and do our best to help. That's about all I have to say on that. So I'm going to hand back to Kyle.
And that's exactly what we're here for, and it's a perfect lead-in to talk about the Boomerang customer experience. It's a very unique experience. Kurt had alluded to the Boomerang benefit, both the benefits of having offices in the US and the UK. We're the only carnet company throughout the world that can actually issue carnets into origin countries. So you can take advantage of that when you have productions that are going between the US and the UK. And it's a unique experience in that it's not just customer service. It goes really a lot farther than that. You could take advantage of including our knowledge. We have a vast knowledge bank. Kurt and the Wilson family have been doing this for over 35 years. Every carnet specialist, in order to qualify for a carnet specialist position, you have to be at least on staff for 2 years. So everybody you talk to when you pick up one of our carnet helplines, both in the US and the UK, is knowledgeable. This is what we do. This is all we do. Our experience goes back decades. So take advantage of that. Over 35 years of doing this and nothing but this really creates and tenders a very unique experience for our clients. If anybody knows what Trustpilot is, that's where those stars in the top right come from. You'll see glowing reviews. It's actually my favorite part of my job is the interaction with clients in all the different industries, especially the film industry, when you can help somebody who is, take one less thing off their plate. Filming is a very stressful industry. Last minute travel in general. If we can help in any way, at least to help you get the Carnet and coach you on it, that's really rewarding for us. So we're not going to read these off verbatim, but these are just just a few of the very, very many positive reviews we have, both on our website, on Trustpilot. We try to make it easy and affordable. Again, trying to make it easy to take one more thing off your plate. Our rates, both in the US and the UK, are extremely competitive. So especially, filming comes with a budget, and especially people that never had to get a Carnet if they just did filming within the EU. Now that's an added expense, and we understand that. So we try to make it both easy and affordable. We offer specialized guidance. Again, this is our whole world. We eat, sleep, and breathe these things. 24/7. We're here to guide you both before and during the process, as well as after. The application and the preparation process, as Eric had said, can be a tedious one, but we're here to guide you in that. When you get your Carnet, we're here to deliver it. Eric's done deliveries in person. We've done deliveries in person. We have same-day services on both sides. So we're there during that process. And then during the usage, we're here to coach you through. Once you have your Carnet, we'll do a walkthrough with you. During your travel, I get calls from clients all the time. Hey, Kyle, I think I missed a stamp somewhere. What do I do? That's what we're here for. And again, last minute deadlines. We know the filming industry deals with those. And because of the boomerang benefit, both on the US and the UK, we can accommodate those last minute deadlines. And then again, just turning back to our knowledge, this is really our area of expertise. We are truly the experts in this, and we want to be here for you. Your success is our success. We want to make sure people are using Carnets and gleaning from their vast benefit, both from a cost standpoint with the high import duties and taxes you avoid, as well as an ease of which you pass through customs. So that's who we are, and this is how you can reach us. Again, my name is Kyle Erson. On the meeting here, we also have Kurt Wilson, Managing Director in the UK, President and CEO in the US, as well as Eric Huyton, Media Carnet Specialist. There are our websites across the top. There are our emails across the bottom and our phone numbers. Pick up the phone. Our helplines are not battling through a million menus to get somebody on the phone, a live person. You're going to get one of us in a couple of rings no matter what. So I'll let Kurt and Eric weigh in with final thoughts. But again, we just wanted to thank you guys for your attention. And you can message us during this focus on the digital platform and afterwards when it stays up, or you could just reach out. So we're here for you, point being.
Thank you, Kyle. And thank everyone for listening in to this presentation, and hope to see you or hear from you. And if you have any questions, I won't belabor what Kyle's gone over thoroughly, but please contact us. We don't charge for questions, and we certainly don't charge for answers.